Thank you for watching this day. Today is Wednesday, and it's very windy outside, blowing in some rain, but it's been a good week so far for me. Real busy with doing things for the get ready for the Bible study and things with family and things at school. So, been a good week overall so far. We continue our Lenten study based on the book by Max Lucado called Every Day Deserves a Chance. So we're looking at chapter 7 in the book, and the chapter is called Fuel for Depleted Days. You don't have to have the book for the study, but this is where the background information comes from and the questions that we ask. I've had to have a place for you to answer online. And if you'd like to copy and paste them and reply back, you can. You can reply just to me, or you can reply to all, have some discussion going. And I'll be available online tonight between 6:30 to 7:30 to dialogue with you. Running out of gas in your car, what could be worse? All it takes is running out of gas once, and you'll make sure you don't do it again. That's been my experience. The author says women see the empty gas tank as an inconvenience, men see it as an ultimate failure. I almost ran out of gas one time last year when I was driving to Stark. I came during the week and I wanted to do some work at the church, and then I wanted to visit somebody at the Guest Home Estates in Erie. So I get to Stark and then I go to Erie and I visit this person. I did not check my gas tank on the way out of town, so I drove back to Stark. And then I, in my ultimate wisdom, looked at the gas gauge and I found it was empty and I would not be able to make it back to Fort Scott. So Nancy Richrine actually gave Tank by rescue. I called her and she brought me a container with enough gas that I could get to the gas station in Erie. So then I had to drive back to Erie and then I could drive home. So that hasn't happened again because, like I say, once you run out of gas, you don't want it to happen again. Um, what do we do when we run out of gas? We can try to start the car anyway, but that won't work. You can stare at the gauge and hope it changes. You can try to blame someone for the problem. You can yell at the car, but the only thing that will work is to get more gas. When we run out of gas in many areas of life, we need to find a way to get the tank filled. God can help us with that. Right now, this whole coronavirus thing is taking gas out of our tank. We are tired of the whole thing. I know I am. We want things to go back to the way they were before. We need to find a way to put more gas in our tank. And it seems like we've been having some months that, bad things have been happening, and it seemed like one after another, but we seem to be getting past that a little bit. But at the time, we had to find a way to get gas in our tank. In Mark chapter 6, we read about the feeding of the 5,000. They had not run out of gas, they ran out of food. How did the disciples handle the situation? They came to Jesus, but do they ask for help with the food situation? In verses 35 and 36, it says, when it grew late, the disciples came to him and said, this is a deserted place, and the hour is now very late. Send them away so that they may go into the surrounding country and villages and buy something for themselves to eat. They don't want to deal with it. They just want to send the people away. What does Jesus do? He tells them, you give them something to eat. The disciples answer, are we to go and buy 200 denarii worth of bread and give it to them to eat? The disciples see problems. It is late. They are in a deserted place and they don't have enough money. We know the rest of the story. They have a few loaves of bread and some fish, and Jesus turns it into a feast. The disciples had seen Jesus perform many other miracles, healing the sick, casting out demons, walking on water, and bringing sight to the blind. Yet, they couldn't see how he could solve this problem. We too have our times when we run out of gas or food or ideas and we don't see a solution, but God can help us. Is your problem too large? Ephesians chapter 3, verse 20. Now to him who by the power at work within us is able to accomplish abundantly far more than we can ask or imagine. That happens to be one of my favorite verses. Is your need too great? In 2 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 8, it says, and God is able to provide you with every blessing in abundance, so that by always having enough of everything, you may share abundantly in every good work. So that's why God provides for us, so we can do good works and because He loves us. Is your temptation too severe? Hebrews chapter 2 verse 18 says, because He Himself was tested by what He suffered, He is able to help those who are being tested. Are your sins too numerous? Hebrews chapter 7 verse 25 says, consequently He is able for all time to save those who approach God through Him, since He always lives to make intercession for them. Is your future too frightening? Jude chapter 1 verse 24 says, now to Him who is able to keep you from falling and to make you stand without blemish in the presence of His glory with rejoicing. Is your enemy too strong? In Philippians chapter 3 verse 21, it says, He will transfer the body of our humiliation, that it may be conformed to the body of His glory, by the power that also enables Him to make all things subject to Himself. When we run out of gas, our first thought is, how do I get to a gas pump? When we have problems, we need to think, how can I get this problem to Jesus? If we look at the feeding of the 5,000 in John chapter 6, we find there was a little boy that had 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. He gave what he had to Jesus, and Jesus took care of the rest. We can give our problems to Jesus and let Him take care of it. So some questions. The mistake of the disciples is not that they calculated the problem, but that they calculated without Christ. In giving Jesus no chance, they gave their day no chance. They reserved a table for 12 at the restaurant of the rotten day. A. Describe a time when you reserved a table at the restaurant of the rotten day. B. How can Christ make a difference for you in whatever difficulties you're facing right now? Number 2. God is able to accomplish, provide help, save, keep, subdue. He is able to do what you can't. He already has a plan. A. Do you believe that God already has a plan to help and provide for you? If not, why not? If so, how does your belief change the way you feel? B. What does God do for you that you can't do for yourself? And then number 3. My first thought when I ran out of fuel was, how can I get this car to the gas pump? Your first thought when you have a problem should be, how can I get this problem to Jesus? So A. How do you approach problems in your everyday life? And B, what does it mean to you to give your problems to Jesus? How can you do this better in practice? And then number 4, you're going to run out of gas. We all do. Next time the needle sits on the wrong side of empty, remember, the one who fed the crowds is a prayer away. So A, tell how someone you know personally saw the miraculous hand of Jesus doing what that person could not do. And B, do you think Jesus wants to work in your life as He worked in the lives of the disciples? Explain. Then read Mark chapter 6, verses 30 through 44. And this is it. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to Him all they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going, they did not even have a chance to eat. He said to them, come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, He had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So He began teaching them many things. By this time it was late in the day, so His disciples came to Him. This is a remote place, they said, and it's already very late. Send the people away so that they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. But He answered, you give them something to eat. They said to Him, that would take more than half a year's wages. Are we going to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? How many loaves do you have? He asked. Go and see. When they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of the men who had eaten was 5,000. So A, what instructions did Jesus give his exhausted disciples in verse 31? Why did they give him this instruction? And B, how did Jesus react to the crowds that tried to circumvent his instructions to his disciples? In verse 34, why did he react this way? C, what was the disciples' solution to the problem they faced? And that's in verses 35 and 36. D, how did Jesus respond to their suggestion? And that's in verse 37. E, how did the disciples react to Jesus' instructions? And F, how did Jesus involve his disciples in the solution? And that's in verse 41. G, in your opinion, what did Jesus accomplish through this miracle? Now read 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 8 through 11. We do not want you to be uninformed, brothers and sisters, about the troubles we experienced in the province of Asia. We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt we had received the sentence of death. But this happened that we might not rely on ourselves, but on God who raises the dead. He has delivered us from such deadly peril, and he will deliver us again. On him we have set our hope that he will continue to deliver us, as you help us by your prayers. Then many will give thanks on our behalf for the gracious favor granted us in answer to the prayers of mercy of many. A, what did Paul want his friend to know about his circumstances? It's in verse 8. B, what does Paul mean by the deadly peril in verse 10? C, what hope for the future did Paul have? And that's in verse 10. And D, to whom did Paul look for assistance? And that's verse 11. I hope you enjoyed this Bible study and found it as encouraging to you as I found it encouraging to me. It was really good to hear all those positive verses. And I look forward to seeing you on Sunday.